You know what they say about the American dream? It's called a dream because you have to be asleep to believe it. My name is Caleb Huxley, and I'm living proof that sometimes nightmares wear wedding rings and carry insulin pumps. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. At 39, I'm a paramedic in Cleveland, Ohio, a job that pays just enough to keep the lights on and the medical supplies flowing for my 12-year-old son Dylan, who's got type 1 diabetes. My wife Tara, well, she's got a different kind of condition. It's called being a selfish, image-obsessed harpy who thinks parenting means showing up for the Facebook photos. Our house is a fixer-upper that's been in progress for about 8 years now. The kitchen faucet drips like a metronome, the front steps creak loud enough to wake anyone, and there's a water stain on the living room ceiling that looks suspiciously like the state of Texas. Tara calls it rustic charm when her friends come over, but I call it what happens when you marry a part-time bookkeeper who spends more on manicures than home repairs. Dylan's my world, though. Kid's got more courage in his pinky finger than most adults have in their entire bodies. He checks his sugar 6 times a day, counts carbs like a mathematician, and never complains about the shots or the pump or the fact that his mother treats his medical condition like a personal inconvenience. Speaking of Tara, she's been working late a lot lately. Busy season, she says, which is funny because I'm pretty sure her boss Liam Brooks keeps her busy year-round. Liam's one of those high-profile attorneys who drives a Range Rover and wears suits that cost more than I make in a month. He's got that smug look that screams, "I've never worked a real day in my life, but I'll sue you if you look at me wrong." The warning signs were all there. I just chose to ignore them. The late-night phone calls where Tara would suddenly get quiet when I walked into the room. The new clothes that definitely didn't come from Target. The way she'd roll her eyes whenever Dylan needed his insulin or had to test his sugar. "You coddle him too much, Caleb," she'd say. "He needs to learn independence." Independence. Right. Because a 12-year-old with a potentially fatal medical condition should just figure it out on his own. My partner Walt Williams, has been telling me for months that something's off. Walt's been running ambulances in Cleveland for 15 years, and he's got that sixth sense about people that comes from seeing humanity at its absolute worst on a daily basis. "Your wife's got that look, man," he told me last Tuesday as we grabbed coffee between calls. "Like she's already checked out but hasn't bothered to pack her bags yet." I should have listened to him. I should have listened to Mrs. Galloway next door, who's got eyes like a hawk and a mouth like a police scanner. She'd been dropping hints about unusual activity at my house during my night shifts, but I was too busy trying to hold everything together, too busy making sure Dylan had his supplies, that the bills were paid, that our little family looked normal from the outside. The breaking point came on a Thursday night in March. I was pulling a double shift, and Dylan called me at 2:17 a.m. I'll never forget that time because it's burned into my brain like a brand. "Dad?" His voice was shaky, scared. "Mom took my pump away." Those 6 words hit me like a freight train. "What do you mean she took your pump away?" "She said I was being dramatic about my sugar readings and that I needed to learn to manage without it for a while. Dad, I feel really sick." I was already moving toward the ambulance before he finished talking. "Dylan, listen to me very carefully. Go to the kitchen and drink some orange juice. Then call 911 and tell them you're a diabetic having an emergency. I'm on my way." The drive home was the longest 12 minutes of my life. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. Walt was riding shotgun, already radioing ahead to dispatch. "Domestic situation involving medical neglect of a minor," he said into the radio. "Requesting police backup and additional EMS unit." When we pulled up to the house, I could see Tara through the living room window, pacing back and forth with her phone pressed to her ear. She looked panicked, which was probably the first genuine emotion I'd seen from her in months. Dylan was sitting on the front steps, pale as a ghost but conscious. The orange juice had helped, but his hands were trembling, and he looked like he might pass out any second. "Where's your pump, buddy?" I asked, kneeling down beside him. "She hid it somewhere. Said she'd give it back when I stopped being so dependent on it." I felt something cold and hard settle in my chest. This wasn't just neglect. This was deliberate endangerment of my son's life. The police arrived just as I was helping Dylan into the back of the ambulance. Officer Martinez, a guy I'd worked with on dozens of calls, took one look at the situation and started asking the right questions. "Mr. Huxley, can you explain what happened here?" Before I could answer, Tara came storming out of the house. "This is ridiculous. I'm his mother, and I was just trying to teach him some responsibility. Caleb treats him like he's made of glass." Officer Martinez looked at Dylan, who was now hooked up to a glucose monitor, then back at Tara. "Ma'am, are you telling me you deliberately withheld medical equipment from a diabetic child? It's not medical equipment. It's a crutch. He needs to learn." "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to retrieve that insulin pump immediately." The next hour was a blur of paperwork, statements, and phone calls to emergency custody lawyers. Tara finally produced Dylan's pump from her bedroom closet, where she'd hidden it like it was contraband instead of life-saving medical equipment. As the police escorted Tara out of the house for questioning, she turned to me with a look of pure venom. "You'll regret this, Caleb. I'll make sure you lose everything." I looked down at Dylan, who was finally getting the insulin his body desperately needed, then back at my wife. "Lady, I already have." Nothing says successful parenting like spending your morning in family court with a lawyer who smells like tuna salad and lost hope. Judge Patricia Hendricks had that look that said she'd seen every kind of family dysfunction Cleveland had to offer, and somehow we'd still managed to surprise her. "Mrs. Huxley," Judge Hendricks said, peering over her reading glasses, "you're telling this court that you confiscated your diabetic son's insulin pump as a form of discipline?" Tara, dressed in her best "I'm a responsible mother" outfit, shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "Your Honor, I was trying to teach Dylan independence. My husband babies him constantly, and I felt—" "What you felt," the judge interrupted, "was that it was appropriate to endanger a child's life to make a point about parenting philosophy." My lawyer, Bob Kowalski, leaned over and whispered, "She's hanging herself. Just let her talk." And talk she did. For 20 minutes, Tara explained to an increasingly horrified courtroom how Dylan was too dependent on his medical equipment, how I was overprotective, and how she was just trying to be a good mother. The judge's decision was swift and brutal. Tara was ordered into mandatory parenting classes, supervised visitation only, and a medical protection plan was put in place that made it clear that any interference with Dylan's diabetes management would result in immediate arrest. As we walked out of the courthouse, Tara grabbed my arm. "You've destroyed our family, Caleb. I hope you're proud of yourself." I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in months. The woman I'd married 13 years ago was still there somewhere, buried under layers of selfishness and entitlement, but I couldn't find her anymore. "I didn't destroy anything, Tara. I just stopped pretending it wasn't already broken." That afternoon, Dylan and I moved into a small apartment across town. It wasn't much: 2 bedrooms, a kitchen that was barely big enough for both of us to stand in, and a view of the parking lot behind a tire shop. But it was ours, and more importantly, it was safe. Mrs. Galloway helped us move, bless her nosy heart. At 73, she had more energy than people half her age and a network of neighborhood informants that would make the CIA jealous. "That wife of yours has been having quite the social life while you've been working," she said, as we carried boxes up the stairs. "Lots of late-night visitors, expensive cars in the driveway." "Mrs. Galloway, I appreciate the concern, but—" "Liam Brooks," she said, cutting me off. "That fancy lawyer, Range Rover, license plate says Lawman 1. subtle as a brick through a window. I stopped halfway up the stairs. What did you say? Oh, honey, the whole neighborhood knows. Vicky Patterson, has been covering for her, telling anyone who'll listen that they're just working late on important cases. But important cases don't usually involve champagne and overnight bags. The pieces started falling into place. The new clothes, the late nights, the way Tara had been treating Dylan like an inconvenience instead of her son. She wasn't just checking out of our marriage, she was trading up. That evening, after Dylan was settled in with his homework and his sugar was stable, I did something I'd never done before. I went through Tara's phone records. What I found made my stomach turn. Hundreds of texts to Liam Brooks, hours of phone calls, usually late at night after I'd left for work. And then there were the credit card statements I'd been too trusting to examine closely. Expensive dinners at restaurants I couldn't pronounce, hotel charges in downtown Cleveland, purchases at lingerie stores that definitely weren't for my benefit. Dylan looked up from his math homework. Dad, are you okay? You look really mad. I forced a smile. Just thinking about work stuff, buddy. How are you feeling? Better. The new pump is working great. He paused, then added quietly, I'm sorry Mom got so mad about it. That's when it hit me. My 12-year-old son was apologizing for having a medical condition that his mother had used as a weapon against him. He was sorry for nearly dying because she wanted to prove a point. The cold, hard thing in my chest from that night at the house grew bigger. The next morning, I did something that probably wasn't smart, but felt absolutely necessary. I drove to Liam Brooks's law firm. The offices of Brooks, Hamilton, and Associates occupied the top 3 floors of a downtown high-rise. Everything was marble and mahogany, and the kind of quiet that comes from thick carpets and thicker wallets. The receptionist, a young woman who looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine, smiled at me with practiced politeness. Good morning. How can I help you? I'm here to see Liam Brooks. Tell him Caleb Huxley is here about his relationship with my wife. Her smile faltered. I'm sorry. Mr. Brooks is in a meeting. Then I'll wait. I settled into one of their expensive leather chairs and pulled out my phone. Started scrolling through the text messages I'd screenshot from Tara's phone. Messages that would make a sailor blush and a divorce lawyer very, very happy. 20 minutes later, Liam Brooks emerged from the elevator. He was exactly what I'd expected, tall, perfectly groomed, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my car. But there was something nervous in his eyes as he approached me. Mr. Huxley, I presume. Perhaps we should discuss this privately. Oh, I think here is just fine. I stood up, and I had the satisfaction of seeing him take a small step backward. See, Liam, can I call you Liam? I've been having the most interesting conversations with my neighbors lately. I don't know what you think you know. I know that my wife nearly eliminated my son because she was too busy thinking about your Range Rover and your expensive dinners to remember that he's got a medical condition that requires actual attention. My voice was getting louder, and I could see other people in the lobby starting to stare. I know that while I was working double shifts to pay for his medical supplies, you were buying her lingerie and hotel rooms. Liam's face was turning red. You need to leave, now, before I call security. I laughed. Actually laughed, right there in his fancy lobby. Security? That's your solution? You know what, Liam? You're welcome to her. But here's the thing. I'm done playing nice. I leaned in closer, close enough that he could smell the coffee on my breath and see the exhaustion in my eyes from working nights and taking care of a sick kid. You want to destroy my family? Fine. But I'm going to make sure everyone in this city knows exactly what kind of people you both are. And unlike you, I don't need expensive lawyers to do it. As I walked toward the elevator, I heard him call after me. You're making a big mistake, Huxley. I'll destroy you in court. I'll make sure you lose custody, lose your job, lose everything. I turned around and smiled at him. A real smile, the kind that probably should have scared him more than it did. Good. I like a fair fight. Walt was waiting for me in the ambulance depot parking lot when I got back from my little visit to Liam's office. He had 2 cups of coffee and that look that said he'd been expecting this conversation. "So," he said, handing me a cup, "I heard through the grapevine that you made quite an impression downtown this morning. News travels fast. Faster when you threaten a high-profile attorney in front of half his staff." Walt took a sip of his coffee and studied my face. "You know he's going to come after you hard, right? Guys like that don't just let things slide." I thought about Dylan, sitting in his new bedroom last night, carefully organizing his diabetes supplies in a tackle box we'd bought at Walmart. The kid was 12 years old and more responsible about his medical care than his own mother. Let him come. I'm done being the nice guy who gets stepped on. What I didn't tell Walt was that I'd already started planning. See, the thing about being a paramedic is that you learn to think fast under pressure. You learn to assess a situation, identify the problems, and take decisive action. And right now, Tara and Liam were the problems. Mrs. Galloway had become my unofficial intelligence network. That woman knew more about what was happening in Cleveland than the mayor's office. "Your wife's been telling people that you're an abusive husband," she informed me over coffee that afternoon. "Says you threatened her, and that's why she had to move in with her sister." She moved in with her sister? "Temporarily, until she can get back on her feet after your violent outburst." Mrs. Galloway made air quotes with her fingers. "Course nobody's buying it. Half the neighborhood saw the police escort her out after what she did to Dylan." This was interesting. Tara was trying to control the narrative, paint herself as the victim, but she'd forgotten that actions have consequences, and in the age of social media, those consequences can spread faster than wildfire. That evening, I did something that felt both petty and absolutely justified. I created a Facebook post. "Some of you have been asking about the recent changes in my family situation. I want to set the record straight. Last week, my wife deliberately hid my 12-year-old son's insulin pump as punishment for his diabetes symptoms. Dylan had to call 911 while I was at work. Family court has ordered supervised visitation and mandatory parenting classes. I'm sharing this not for sympathy, but because I believe our community deserves to know when a child's safety is at risk." I attached the court documents, with personal information redacted, but the medical neglect charges clearly visible. Within 2 hours, the post had been shared 50 times. By morning, it was all over the neighborhood social media groups. Tara called me, screaming, "How dare you humiliate me like this? You're destroying my reputation." "Your reputation?" I laughed. "Tara, you destroyed your own reputation when you decided our son's life was less important than making a point. I'm going to sue you for defamation." "With what lawyer? Because I'm pretty sure Liam's going to be busy dealing with his own problems soon." That wasn't a bluff. Walt had a friend in the police department who'd mentioned that several women had filed complaints about Liam Brooks over the years. Nothing that had stuck, but a pattern of behavior that suggested my wife wasn't his first affair with a client. The next morning brought the first real test of my new approach to conflict resolution. I was dropping Dylan off at school when I saw Tara's car in the pickup lane. She wasn't supposed to have unsupervised contact with Dylan, but there she was, clearly planning to intercept him. I parked the ambulance. Yes, I was driving the ambulance, which probably wasn't strictly legal but was definitely effective, and walked over to her car. "What are you doing here, Tara?" "I'm picking up my son. I have rights." "You have supervised visitation rights. This isn't supervised." She got out of the car and I could see she'd been crying. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "Please, Caleb, I just want to talk to him. I want to explain." "Explain what? How you decided his medical condition was inconvenient? How you've been cheating on his father with your boss?" A crowd was starting to gather. Other parents, dropping off their kids, were beginning to stare. Tara noticed too, and her expression shifted from pleading to angry. "You're making a scene. I'm preventing a kidnapping." That's when Dylan appeared, walking out of the school building with his backpack and that careful, measured pace that meant he was monitoring his energy levels. He saw both of us and stopped. I could see the conflict in his face. He loved his mother, despite everything, but he was also scared of her now. "Mom?" Tara rushed toward him, but I stepped between them. "Dylan, your mom isn't supposed to be here right now. Get in the ambulance." "I just want to hug my son," Tara shouted, loud enough for everyone in the parking lot to hear. "Then maybe you shouldn't have used his medical condition as a weapon against him," I replied, equally loud. The crowd was definitely watching now. I could see phones coming out, people starting to record. Good. Let them see what was really happening. Dylan, bless him, made the choice himself. He walked around both of us and climbed into the passenger seat of the ambulance. "I'll see you during visitation, Mom," he said through the open window, "when there's a social worker there." Tara's face crumpled. For a moment she looked like the woman I'd married, vulnerable and hurt. But then she turned to me with pure hatred in her eyes. "This isn't over." "No," I agreed. "It's not." As I drove away, I could see her in the rearview mirror, standing in the school parking lot with a dozen parents staring at her and at least 3 people still recording with their phones. By lunchtime, the video was on YouTube with the title, "Mother Tries to Violate Court Order, Gets Shut Down by Paramedic Dad." It had been viewed 10,000 times by dinner. The video of the school parking lot confrontation changed everything. Suddenly, I wasn't just some guy going through a messy divorce. I was paramedic dad, the father who'd stood up to his abusive ex-wife to protect his diabetic son. Local news stations started calling. A reporter from Channel 8 wanted to do a human interest story about single fathers dealing with medical emergencies. The Cleveland Plain Dealer asked for an interview about children's rights in custody cases. I turned them all down. This wasn't about fame or publicity, it was about justice. And justice, I was learning, sometimes requires a more personal touch. Liam Brooks had been busy too. Walt's police contact mentioned that Liam had been asking around about me, trying to find anything he could use to discredit me or get me fired. He'd even called my supervisor at the EMS department, claiming I'd been harassing him and his client. My supervisor, Captain Williams, called me into his office on a Tuesday morning. "Caleb, I need to ask you about this situation with your wife and her lawyer." I'd been expecting this conversation. "What do you want to know?" "Did you threaten Liam Brooks?" I told him I was done playing nice. If that's a threat, then yeah, I threatened him. Captain Williams leaned back in his chair. He'd been running the EMS department for 12 years, and he'd seen his share of personal drama spill over into professional life. "Look, I get it. The guy's sleeping with your wife and she nearly eliminated your kid. If it were me, I'd probably want to do more than threaten him. But I need to know you're not going to do anything that reflects badly on this department." "I'm not going to break any laws, if that's what you're asking." "That's not exactly what I'm asking." I met his eyes. "I'm going to make sure everyone in this city knows what kind of people they really are. But I'm going to do it legally and ethically." He nodded slowly. "Just remember that revenge has a way of eating the person seeking it. Don't let this destroy you, too." That afternoon, I put the next phase of my plan into motion. Mrs. Galloway had mentioned that Liam's law firm was hosting a charity gala at the Marriott downtown. $500 a plate, all the city's elite would be there, including several judges and the mayor. It was exactly the kind of event where reputation mattered more than truth. I couldn't afford a ticket, obviously, but I didn't need one. I just needed to be in the right place at the right time with the right information. Walt thought I was losing my mind when I explained the plan. "You want to do what?" "I want you to call in a fake medical emergency at the hotel during the gala. Nothing serious, just enough to get EMS called to the scene. Then, while we're there on official business, We're going to make sure everyone knows exactly who Liam Brooks really is. That's insane, and probably illegal. It's not illegal to respond to a medical call, and it's not illegal to have a conversation while we're there. Walt stared at me for a long moment. You know this is going to backfire, right? Guys like Brooks don't go down easy. Then it's a good thing I'm not going down at all. The gala was everything I'd expected. A bunch of rich people in expensive clothes, congratulating themselves for writing checks to charity while ignoring the actual problems in their own city. The medical emergency was perfectly timed. Mrs. Patterson, one of Mrs. Galloway's network of informants, had volunteered to have a very convincing anxiety attack in the hotel lobby right around 9 p.m., just as the cocktail hour was ending. Walt and I responded to the call, along with another EMS unit for authenticity. Mrs. Patterson was a retired theater teacher, and her performance was Oscar-worthy. While Walt handled the patient, I made my way into the ballroom. It wasn't hard to spot Liam. He was holding court near the bar, surrounded by the kind of people who think money makes them interesting. I walked right up to him. "Mr. Brooks, what a surprise seeing you here." His face went white when he saw me in my paramedic uniform. "What are you doing here?" "Medical call. Nothing serious, just someone having a panic attack." I smiled at the group around him. Funny thing about panic attacks, they can be triggered by guilt, stress from keeping secrets, that kind of thing. One of the women in the group, a judge I recognized from family court, looked between us with interest. "Do you two know each other?" "Oh yes," I said. "Mr. Brooks here has been providing legal counsel to my wife. Very personal counsel, if you know what I mean." Liam grabbed my arm. "You need to leave. Now. Actually, I need to make sure everyone here knows what kind of man they're doing business with." I pulled out my phone and started reading from the screenshots I'd saved. "Here's a text from last Tuesday. Can't wait to get you out of those clothes. Your husband has no idea what he's missing." The group around us had gone silent. Judge Martinez, the same judge who'd handled our custody case, was staring at Liam with undisguised disgust. "And here's my personal favorite," I continued. "Dylan's just being dramatic about his diabetes. You should leave Caleb and bring the kid with you. I can afford better medical care than a paramedic." That last one was a lie. I'd made it up, but the damage was done. The entire ballroom was staring at us now, and I could see phones coming out again. "You see," I said to the crowd, "while I was working double shifts to pay for my diabetic son's medical care, Mr. Brooks here was convincing my wife that our son's life-threatening condition was just drama. And when she nearly eliminated him by hiding his insulin pump, Mr. Brooks offered to help her get custody so she could continue neglecting his medical needs." Liam was shaking with rage. "That's defamation. I'll sue you for everything you have." "With what reputation?" I asked. "Because I'm pretty sure everyone here just heard what kind of lawyer you really are." Security was moving toward us now, but the damage was done. I'd said what I came to say in front of the people who mattered most to Liam's career. As they escorted me out, I heard Judge Martinez say to someone behind me, "I'm going to have to recuse myself from any cases involving his firm. This is a serious ethical violation." The video of the confrontation was online within an hour. By morning, it had been shared across every legal forum in Ohio. Liam Brooks's reputation was in ruins. But I wasn't done yet. The fallout from the gala was swift and brutal. By Wednesday morning, 3 major clients had dropped Liam's firm. By Thursday, the Ohio State Bar Association had opened an ethics investigation. By Friday, someone had leaked internal emails showing that Liam had been overbilling clients and falsifying timesheets for years. That someone might have been his assistant, Jennifer Martinez, who'd finally gotten tired of covering for his behavior and decided to do the right thing. Or it might have been an anonymous tip from someone who'd gained access to his email through perfectly legal means. Either way, Liam Brooks was finished. Tara, meanwhile, was discovering what life looked like when you burned all your bridges. Her sister had kicked her out after a week, tired of listening to her complain about how everyone was being unfair to her. Vicky, her best friend and chief enabler, had distanced herself once the videos went viral, and she realized her reputation was getting dragged down too. Mrs. Galloway kept me updated on all the neighborhood gossip. "She's been staying at that cheap motel on Brook Park Road," she reported over coffee. "The one with the hourly rates and the broken neon sign, quite a step down from the Marriott." "How do you know all this?" "My granddaughter works at the front desk. Says your wife comes in every night looking like she's been crying and leaves every morning looking like she wants to eliminate someone." I should have felt sorry for her. Part of me did. But then I'd look at Dylan, who was thriving in our little apartment, his sugar stable, and his confidence growing every day, and I'd remember why I was doing this. The final confrontation came on a Saturday afternoon in late April. Dylan was at a friend's house, his first sleepover since the divorce proceedings started, and I was finally allowing myself to believe that we were going to be okay. That's when Liam showed up at my apartment. He looked terrible. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his hair was uncombed, and there was something desperate in his eyes that should have been a warning. "We need to talk," he said when I opened the door. "I don't think we do. You've destroyed my life, my career, my reputation, everything I worked for." I leaned against the doorframe. "Funny, I thought you did that yourself when you decided to sleep with a married woman and encourage her to neglect her diabetic son. That's not what happened. Isn't it? Because I've got text messages that say otherwise." He pushed past me into the apartment, and I let him. I wanted to see how far he'd go, how desperate he'd become. "You don't understand," he said, pacing around my living room like a caged animal. "I loved her. I was going to leave my wife for her." "Your wife? I didn't know you were married." His face flushed red. That's not the point." "Oh, I think it is exactly the point. You were cheating on your wife with my wife, and you encouraged her to endanger my son's life. And now you're upset because there are consequences?" He spun around to face me, and I could see he was barely holding it together. "I could have given her everything. A better life, financial security, respect." "Respect?" I laughed. "You mean the respect that comes from being the mistress of a cheating lawyer who steals from his clients?" That's when he snapped. Liam came at me swinging, but he was a lawyer, not a fighter. I'd been a paramedic for 15 years, dealing with violent drunks and overdose patients who fought like their lives depended on it. Subduing one angry attorney wasn't exactly a challenge. I had him pinned on the floor in about 10 seconds, and that's when I noticed something beautiful. My phone, which I'd left recording on the kitchen counter, had captured the entire thing. "Get off me," he shouted. "Are you going to calm down, or do I need to call the police? I'll sue you for assault. For defending myself in my own home after you attacked me? Good luck with that." I let him up, and he immediately started trashing my living room, knocked over a lamp, swept everything off my coffee table, kicked a hole in the drywall, all of it on video. "Feel better?" I asked when he finally stopped. He was breathing hard, sweat dripping down his face. "This isn't over." "Yeah, it is." I played back the video on my phone, showing him the part where he'd attacked me and then destroyed my property. "See, here's the thing about being a paramedic. We're trained to document everything. And this little tantrum of yours? It's going to look great in court when you're explaining to a judge why you broke into my home and assaulted me." His face went white. "You can't." "I can, and I will. Unless what? Unless you and Tara disappear from my life completely. No more custody fights, no more harassment, no more attempts to contact Dylan. You leave Cleveland, you leave us alone, and I don't press charges for breaking and entering, assault and destruction of property." He stared at me for a long moment, then at the video on my phone. "You're insane." "No, I'm a father protecting his son. There's a difference." 20 minutes later, Liam Brooks left my apartment for the last time. I never saw him again. Tara lasted another week before she came to see me. She looked different, Smaller, somehow, like all the fight had gone out of her. "I want to say goodbye to Dylan," she said. "You can see him during supervised visitation. I'm leaving Cleveland. Tonight." I studied her face. She meant it. "Where are you going?" "Does it matter? There's nothing left for me here. My job's gone, my friends won't talk to me, and everyone in this city thinks I'm a monster." "You nearly eliminated our son, Tara. What did you think was going to happen?" She started crying then, real tears for the first time since this whole mess started. "I didn't mean for it to go that far. I wanted him to be normal. I wanted our family to be normal. He is normal. He's a normal kid who happens to have diabetes. The only thing abnormal about our family was you. I know that now. I know I screwed up everything." We stood there in silence for a moment, 13 years of marriage reduced to this awkward conversation in my apartment doorway. "Tell Dylan I love him," she said finally. "Tell him yourself. Write him letters. Call him when he's ready to talk. Be the mother he deserves, even if you can't be here." She nodded and turned to leave, then stopped. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry. About all of it. I know you are." After she left, I sat in my living room and thought about everything that had happened. 3 months ago, I'd been a tired paramedic with a failing marriage and a sick kid. Now I was a single father with full custody, a viral video following, and the satisfaction of knowing that the people who'd threatened my son's life were gone. Dylan came home from his sleepover that evening, chattering about video games and pizza and all the normal things 12-year-old boys talk about. His sugar was perfect, his mood was bright, and for the first time in months, he seemed genuinely happy. "Dad," he said as we were getting ready for bed. "Yeah, buddy? Are Mom and that lawyer guy really gone?" "Yeah, they're really gone." He was quiet for a moment, then hugged me tight. "Good. I like it better when it's just us." "Me too, kiddo. Me too."